Welcome to the Great New Zealand Real Estate Project. I have just had a chat to Hadley from New Zealand Property Buyers, and Hadley is an experienced investor and he has set up an agency that helps represent buyers when they're looking to purchase their next property. The difference between New Zealand Property Buyers and other agencies is that they are contractually representing the buyer rather than the seller. And so we spoke about all the different conflicts that exist within the traditional model when representing buyers. And we also talked about different things that you can look for next time you buy a property. So have a listen and enjoy the conversation. So buyers agencies, tell me about them.
Yeah. So I suppose it's the polar opposite of what you have with like a selling agency, right? So you go out to the market and you represent the buyer in terms of what they're looking for, represent their best interest, guide them around sort of what's good, what's not, and provide the same feedback that if you're a selling agent, you provide to your vendor that we do for our clients who are the buyers, and get them the best deal we possibly can, whether that's price and terms or sort of combination of the two.
Yes, and it's not common in New Zealand at the moment, is it?
No.
Growing in Australia and America.
Yeah.
What was it that inspired starting a buyer's agency?
I think it came back to when I came back from Aussie. We were sort of in a situation of buying some property ourselves, had done some property coaching, and then it was like going to open homes and stuff and just seeing people with absolutely no idea what they were talking about, looking to overpay for property, going, oh, I think this is good, and you're standing there shaking your head going, if you knew what you were doing, you'd run a mile from this, because it's not what you need. And I suppose that's sort of just been reinforced, especially through sort of 2020, 2021. I specifically remember standing outside an open home we were looking at when we were buying our own home, and this guy on the street walks up to me and he goes, had no idea what we did, and just goes, oh, this house here, what do you reckon it's worth? And I was like, oh, I've got no idea, mate. I hadn't sat down and run any comparisons, or we were just having a bit of a look. And he's like, oh, I reckon it's worth about $950. I was like, how did you come up with $950?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I just reckon it is that's what I'd pay for it. And it just sort of reinforced the point of, a lot of people going to stand at the barbecue, talk to their Uncle Bob about the house, and he says, oh, I bought a house 20 years ago, and this is what I think you should do. And then people take that advice for gospel, and a lot of stuff's obviously changed over that period of time. But people also haven't got the resources within themselves to go and look at all the comparables, go and look at what's happening. And had a conversation the other day with some clients like, oh, the QV has said this house is worth this, so we shouldn't pay X number of dollars for it. And then it's like, well, let's look at the price per square metre of land that we're paying for, because it's a land banking deal. Let's have a look at what the comparables are. And then let's have a look at like some actual data. We've got a valuation on one property, and then have a look at what QV says about that one. And so it was like the house was worth $700, the QV was like $590, Homes.co was at $550, and then like One Roof was much the same. And it's just like, if you just go to those valuation sites, you pull the number, and you go, okay, well, if it's on Homes, it's got to be true. But the standard deviation in them's got to be huge from reality to the data that's actually out there.
Yeah, and it can be so subjective valuations as well, because people have a different reason and purpose for buying a property, and so they're going to have different motivations, and that's going to impact the value that they place on the property, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's I suppose the value doesn't always come down to dollars and cents, or in terms of like, I think this property is worth X, because it may be worth X if you're just looking to buy and hold the property. It might be worth a different value to you if you're looking to flip the property. If you're going to develop it, there's probably going to be another value there that's like, the most I would pay for it is X, because that's what it then becomes being worthwhile.
Yeah, so if it's a business decision, you're looking at the numbers.
Yeah.
If you're moving in for your family, you might be prepared to pay a bit more because you're wanting to stay long term. You're not worried so much about if it costs you an extra $20,000 or $30,000 or something like that to secure the property.
Yeah.
Do you find that most buyers that you're working with would have paid too much, or they're not paying enough in the market?
Probably combination of both. There's the people that we get at the start that are like, oh, I just want to lowball everything, and you're like, well, are we just going to go here and lowball and hope that we get something eventually? Or the ones that are like, oh, I've seen this house, I think we should pay this for it. And you go, guys, that's way too much. So it's a bit of a mixture of the two. And I suppose part of what we do is bring a little bit of reality into where it is, to be like, yep, cool, if we can lowball it and the situation's good for us to do that, then yeah, sure, let's do it. But if we need to, pay a little bit more than the asking price, for example, because that's sort of something that a lot of people get caught up in, like, oh, the asking price is 700,000, and then we pay your fees on top of that, so therefore the price is going to go up higher than that. So sort of what are we paying you for? And it happened the other 2 weeks ago with the property that we bought that was listed at 920. We paid 945 for it, but the valuation on it came back at 1.15. And the client himself had actually looked at the property we were showing him, and he discarded it because he was like, oh, it's there's no upside to this. And it's like by the time we sat down and we showed him, we went, look, it had gone into a multi-offer, there's some extra money here. We're better off to pay the extra 10 grand to make 140 than miss out on the property and lose 150 grand.
Because of an asking price.
Yeah, because of asking price, yeah.
Yeah. So in a sense, the real value that you're bringing as a buyer's agent is the assurance that someone is paying the right value for a property, or getting a good deal if they can.
Yeah.
But not missing out, even if sometimes it feels like they're going higher than they should, or than what is advertised.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, at the same time, there's a number of properties that like clients bring to us. I had a client that sent me 2 properties this morning that went, what do you think of these 2? And it's like, well, I know that one. We went through that one 2.5 months ago when it was on. This one here, these are the issues with it. The prices and the rents look to be inflated from all the research that I've looked at. And then she was like, oh, okay, cool. I thought it might have been too good to be true. So it's also about not just going, hey, look, it looks like a good deal, so it must be a good deal. Let's just go and buy it. Yeah. It's like, here's the data and the stats behind it, and this is why we are making this, an informed decision rather than this is what's been advertised, so it must be true.
Yeah. And so do you find then a lot of buyers in the market, I mean, obviously there's that underrepresentation side of it. People are not buying a property every day, so they're coming into the market and kind of going, where do I start? What do I do? How do I make a good decision? And that's where they can rely on you. What is the difference, though, between you as a buyer's agent versus a traditional agent who says, I work with buyers?
Yeah, that old chestnut. I mean, at the end of the day for them, they represent the vendor. So, there's talk of having like, oh, I'll go and talk to the vendor and see what I can do. But at the end of the day, you're represented by who pays you. And so the selling agent that works with buyers, yeah, sure, they might go and show you 10 different homes. But at the end of the day, they're not going to negotiate hard for you or use you as leverage, against the vendor to try and reduce the price. It comes down to the basic fiduciary obligation of who your client is, and you've got to be fair to the customer, but you in that situation you're not there representing them truly. Yeah,
so the say you've got some big agencies out there who promote the size of their network and all this sort of stuff, and what would you say in regards to the current way that the industry is set up?
I think it's probably a bit frustrating and probably it's going to be a big word, but in terms of a big statement, but it's probably like fairly misleading around, I'm a buyer's agent when they work for one of the bigger agencies around, because once again, they're just a selling agent that works buyers rather than a selling agent that goes and gets listings and sells their own properties. And so, or they're an associate of a selling agent that just works with the buyers that turn up. And so it's, like I say, at the end of the day, they're paid by the vendor, so that's who they need to represent at the end of the day. But they've also got no commitment from that purchaser in terms of agency agreement or anything like that, where they can go and show, all of one agency's listings, and then the purchaser decides, hey, look, I like this other agency's listing, so I'm just going to go and buy that. And then the other person's done all the hard work, and there's nothing for it.
Yeah, right. Do you think that it's common knowledge within the marketplace that that's how it works? That, if I'm going to properties, an agent takes me to 20 properties, I don't have a contract with them, that legally they are obligated to get the best price for the vendor and not represent me? Or do you find that people think that the buyer's agent or buyer's agent is representing them?
I think they genuinely think that that the selling agent's got their best interest at heart. Like, one of the things that we see time and time again is, like, you go to open homes and you overhear, like, the selling agent say to someone, oh, so what's your budget? And they go, oh, I can pay up to $800,000. And in their mind, you know, they're going, right, check. Okay, cool. So when you put your offer in at $750, they go back to their vendor and go, Johnny's got a budget of $800. We know he's got some money, some more money in the bank account here. Let's counter at $825 or whatever that is, and just squeeze as much as we possibly can. The selling agents aren't there to help you out. They're there to help their vendor out and get the best possible price for them. So as opposed to us, if someone asks me how much I pay or what my client's budgets are, so I've got to go and talk to them. We haven't decided what we're going to pay yet. We'll get to that once, if we even decide that we're going to, put in an offer for the place. And so keeping your cards close to your chest is, and until such a time as, it comes off a time that you haven't sort of given anything away prior to that. That's knowledge that sort of there that you can be used against you. Bit of judo.
Yeah, exactly. And the selling agent is always asking questions to kind of get information out of the buyer. As a buyer's agent, you can protect their interests in that conversation.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I mean, generally, the questions they'll ask me are very different to what they'll ask someone that they've never dealt with before. The information and the speed of deals generally happen a lot quicker. We'll go and look at something. They'll go, hey, look, what do you think? Yeah, I think I've got a client for it. I'll just have a chat to them. We'll come back to you. Okay, cool. And then we get back to them within sort of 24 hours or even that same day as to what we're going to do. And the transactions just seem to run a whole lot smoother rather than agents getting sort of 10 phone calls from us trying to tease out all the different information that they could potentially go and get themselves.
Yeah, right. And I guess that also takes a lot of stress off the buyer. They must feel a sense of security that they have a professional like yourself that's contracted to represent them.
Yeah, 100%. It's like, so we go through and we explain everything to them. And it's all like part of, I say to all my clients at the start, look, if there's something wrong with the property, I'm probably going to be the first one to tell you not to buy it, rather than trying to strong arm you into, hey, look, we just need to get a deal over the line and get it sorted. It's like, no, this is a genuine issue. We can either renegotiate on it or we need to walk away. And then we can just move on to the next property, as opposed to, someone representing the vendor. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's only this. Surely you can rectify it by doing, X, Y, and Z. Let's try and keep the deal sort of moving. And I'm not saying all selling agents are like that, but their obligations to the seller.
Yeah. So let's say then that I am a buyer.
Yep.
I meet an agent from a traditional agency, and they say, I'm going to help you go look at properties, all of this sort of thing. They may not say to me that they're legally representing the vendor, but contractually they are, because they do a conjunctional sale, split the commission with someone else, and the vendor is actually paying them. As a buyer, I can feel like I've built a relationship with this person and that they're there to help me. What would your comments be in relation to that type of relationship where I have gone to a property with this person, they've taken me to 10 or 15 properties? And also the other thought that comes to mind is, how would the vendor feel about that person if they've built a relationship with the buyer?
Yeah, good questions. I mean, I think in terms of like the relationship that they have with them, it comes back to sort of what we spoke about before, is like, by the time you have that intimate's not the right word, but by the time you have that relationship with them, you know their finances, you know their family, you know everything about them. Generally speaking, if you're under the impression that they're there to help you, in terms of the vendor knowing that, well, it's probably a little bit comforting for them, because they've got a bit more inside knowledge into what's going on and how things are sort of operating and working. But I think it probably just more so comes down to understanding of the general public, because it's always been done the way of like, go and talk to, Dad tells you to go and talk to his mate John, who's been a real estate agent for the last 20 years. And John has always sorted me out, so he'll go and sort you out and go and have a chat to him because he's a good guy. Which is all good and well, and he probably is. But it really comes down to the case of like who's got your best interest at heart and who's there to represent you. I suppose it'd probably be a little bit like going to court and having self-represented in court versus someone that's got a lawyer. and the lawyer's going to protect their client and go, look, this is how we're going to play this is what we're going to do. And they'll be friendly to the other side, but they're not there to be their mate and win the case for them.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think there's probably people out there who feel like that agent, I won't say buyer's agent, so that we keep them separate. So let's say there's an agent and they are working with a client. There probably are some instances where they are trying to get the best price for the buyer, but legally they're meant to be getting the best price for the vendor. And so even if someone finds an agent who's doing it all for them and they're helping them, on the flip side, the vendor thinks, this person should be representing them, and they should be, but now they're helping the buyer to get the best price. And so it creates this huge conflict.
No, definitely. There's definitely a bit of confusion out there. Like I say, when people that work for an agency that's a selling agency call themselves a buyer's agent, because and I think that the REA and through the Ryan's training and stuff like that, have been trying to hammer the fact that
you can't say you're a buyer's agent.
You can't say you're a buyer's agent. You're an agent or you're a salesperson that works with buyers, but you're not a buyer's agent because you haven't got an agency agreement with that particular person.
So for absolute clarity for anyone who's listening, an agent who is a traditional agent, they're representing the vendor, even if they're helping someone go from property to property to property. The difference is for you have a contract with the buyer and they pay you and you're representing them for their best interests. So the difference is the person representing the vendor is technically trying to get the best result for the vendor, even if they're taking you from property to property. For you as a buyer's agent, you are representing the buyer, trying to get them the best deal, which means from a legal perspective, you can actually negotiate the price down if you can for that buyer.
100%. That's the aim of the game.
That's basically the whole thing in a nutshell.
Exactly.
So do you think, because there's not a lot of buyer's agents in New Zealand, do you think there should be? Do you think it needs to change?
100%. I think it's a really, really good thing because it gets, I suppose it's like we were talking about before in terms of like the judo effect of you go and you tell someone everything that's on the opposite side to you, and then they've, like I said, they've got to treat you fairly, but they've got to also do the best by the person that they represent. And it's like you said before, not everyone goes and buys a house every week. The markets change. Just talking to people at a barbecue, or there'll be a barbecue mafia that'll tell you exactly how to go and buy a house, and they haven't done it for 20 years. Or it's interesting. We had some clients that they were taking advice on what properties they should and shouldn't buy from their daughter, who was like 18 years old and was an agent. Well, she was a licensed salesperson, and it's like she'd had next to no experience, but they missed out on a couple of really good deals because it's like who are you taking your advice from? Someone that's been in the industry for 12 months, or someone that hasn't bought a property for a long period of time. Or is it someone that's in the market every day that can go, hey, look, this is actually what's happening. The media will tell you one thing, and then the realities of life can be something quite different.
The media has a lot to be said for everything they push out. One day the market's going up, the next day it's going down, then it's going up again.
It's all over the show.
And then you combine that with the neighbours and the friends and the family, and you just have all this noise.
And then it's no wonder people get paralysed by trying to analyse everything and what's the right thing I should do, and then you end up with a case of I shouldn't have bought, I should have stayed on the sidelines, or I wish I bought 10 years ago when property was $200,000, or the old if onlys.
Yeah, exactly. And so one of the things then, which I imagine is a challenge as a buyer's agent, is the payment side of it, because when it comes to selling, it's built into the sale price of the property. When it comes to buying, someone needs to have the cash to pay you potentially. And so even within the industry, I imagine there's not a lot of room for, say, a first home buyer who probably needs it most because all their money's going into the deposit.
I mean, it's tricky for the first home buyer side of things, depending on obviously how much they've got to spend. It's always good to get a good mortgage broker to figure out how you can finance these things. I suppose the advantage but the disadvantage with what we do is that yes, there's the fee. It excludes some people who haven't got the money to afford it, which is probably the people that need it the most. But we at the end of the day we don't work for a charity, and need to be able to sort of make a dollar to do the things that we need to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then if we were to go and do the flip side of that and try and include it in a sale and purchase agreement, then we sort of change ships midstream, change horses midstream, and start working for the buyer. So it's, you know, the fees have really got to be charged externally.
Yeah, so do you think there's ways around that for people who want to use a buyer's agent but don't have the money? What would your advice be to them?
It's a bit of a tricky one. Like I say, getting good mortgage brokers really the key to it, and figure out what you can and can't do with your finances. I suppose, like with, you know, for us, we don't negotiate on fee at all. Our fee's our fee, and that's just sort of how it is. But it's really, I think, about just, you know, having a conversation around situation, where you are at the moment, what you're looking to do. And then there's always a solution for everything. It's just about finding the right people that can tell you how you can do things, rather than just giving you all the reasons why you can't.
Yeah, right. So with your fees then, is it because I've looked at some of the Australian models and American models, and some of them have a success fee, some of them have a retainer, like per month. How do you do it? And I think you've got a few different services, right?
Yeah, so we've got sort of 3 different services where we just do like bidding at auction, negotiation only, and then our full service. Probably 99% of our clients just go for the full service. I think we've probably done 2 or 3 negotiation onlys where it's been like people buying off family or friends and just don't want to be the one talking directly to them when it comes to money. But yeah, more or less all of them do our full service. We charge retainer up front. We didn't used to. We used to just be like, oh, look, just pay on success. But the problem that we found with that is that we do a whole lot of work for nothing. I suppose it comes back to what we were talking about earlier with, you know, the sales agent that runs around and takes around 20 properties, and then you decide that you want to take the one with the other office, and that the person misses out. So we found that charging the retainer is the way to go. We cover our costs while we're looking. You know, the person's got a whole lot of reason to buy, and it just shows that they're serious, rather than dealing with sort of window shoppers that think the idea is nice, but then when push comes to shove, they haven't committed anything. So it's easy just to back out and walk away and go, actually, we've changed our mind.
Yeah, right. And I imagine for people thinking about, you know, is it worth engaging a buyer's agent? One of the things I've always thought about is, let's say that, and I'm just making up a figure here, if a success fee was 1 or 2% or something like that, it's $1 million property. That could be $10,000 to $20,000 that you're effectively paying. A good negotiator should be able to negotiate better than $10,000 or $20,000 in fees. So, you know, if you're experienced, you know the market, you're going to make sure that someone, you know, could potentially save $100,000 or $50,000 or something. So it's well worth the...
Yeah, I think it probably comes back to like we were talking about before with the deal at 945. I think everyone gets so focused on like your fees are this, so I need to save X number of dollars. I think it needs to be looked at in terms of like the deal as a whole. Like on some deals, we'll save you, you know, X number of dollars. On other deals, we'll pay asking price, but we're going to make you, you know, $150,000 for our fee that was, you know, so for round figures, say 20 grand for that particular property, is like, well, you know, you've paid us 20, but we've made you 130 net, you know, once you've minus our fees.
Yeah, maybe savings is the wrong word. It's the added value, regardless of whether it's off the asking price or above the asking price, because even just knowing that they need to pay asking price and not miss out on the property, if it's a multi-offer or something like that, is important.
They're better to have them make the money than miss out and go, oh, well, maybe next time.
Yeah, so one of the hardest things then is measuring that value, right?
Yeah.
Because how does someone know that the value that they're gaining through the negotiation process is real? Because it's so intangible.
Yeah, it is to a degree. I mean, when you start looking at comparable sales, in terms of from an investment perspective, we tend to work off like yields and what, you know, are places under rented, are they over rented, where do they sit in the market? And that can sometimes be the difference in value. Is like, hey, look, this, you know, there's a block of 3 units here. They're all under rented by $150 a week. At the moment, it might be 6% from a yield perspective because they're rubbish in terms of rent. But we, you know, put them all up $150 a week to market rent, and all of a sudden we've got an 8% yield for doing literally nothing other than, you know, lifting the rents to where they should be. And then from that, you're in a situation where your value increases because your revenue is increased at the same time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
so it's being able to. Sometimes it's obvious when you're spotting a good deal.
Yeah.
Other times not so much.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'd
exactly.
imagine there must be people who, for them, the main value is just time.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, we deal with quite a few overseas clients that are sort of northern hemisphere. So for them to either pick up the phone and call someone down here is either going to be 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and they're up early in the morning. A number of our clients are really busy professional people that even if they were in the same time zone with the jobs that they've got, so it wouldn't have the time or the inclination to go through and
Look at open homes.
Look at open homes and
Yeah.
go and view properties and run numbers on things. So it's easier that we can just set up a time for them, run through a property, show them all the figures, show them the due diligence. We've worked with them enough that there's an element of trust in there as well. That we can go, hey, look, this is basically how it sits. They do their own research. And they've got, the other thing we're dealing with people like that is they've been in the market themselves. They understand money. They understand how things work. So it doesn't take them long to cast their eye over something and go, yeah, cool, that makes sense. Or no, it doesn't. Can you explain this part to me?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's the kind of the shortlisting process for them.
Yeah.
Takes out all the mental energy, the time, the emotional energy as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, right. Okay, and so in terms of, in New Zealand we have this, I can do it myself kind of mindset sometimes. And so there are people who want to go through the process and they, and some people will be good at this, but, to be able to go, I can negotiate, I can get a good price, I believe in myself, but they haven't necessarily bought or sold property before.
Yeah.
What would you say are some of the things that they should be looking out for when they're purchasing a property?
Just doing your due diligence and making sure that your numbers stack up and that you've double checked, what you think is right, and just be really careful who you take your advice from. That's probably the key thing. Is the person that I'm taking advice from just trying to sell me something, or is it actual true advice in terms of like these are genuine rental figures? Just because a property manager gives you a rental appraisal doesn't mean you should believe the rental appraisal straight off the bat. It happens time and time again where we get them that we go and look at them and go, that looks really light. How's the property manager come up with that? Or that looks way overinflated because anything similar in the area, rents, for X. So it's important not just to take everything for gospel and, double check exactly what those facts are and make sure you can back it up rather than, like I say, your uncle tells you that something can rent for $500 a week, so it must be true. Go and get it validated off tenancy or have a look on Trade Me at the other rental listings and just, get a good understanding of what the areas rent for, or if you're buying a first home, understand what you need to look for in a 1920s house. Like, is there still scrim on the walls? And have you mistaken, wallpaper that's just peeling off the walls for scrim? Or it is scrim, but you've thought it's wallpaper peeling off the walls? Is the original switchboard in the house? Have they rewired it? Is there still galvanised plumbing? Are the piles totra? Have they been, repiled? Does it have a building consent? Did it need a building consent for the age of the house? There's a heap of stuff that goes into it. But just getting a really good understanding of sort of what you should be looking for, and then, like I say, who you take that advice off.
Yeah, I think that's all really good ideas. I think a lot of people don't necessarily know how much detail there is and what some of the pitfalls are, like you mentioned scrim and things like that. And I've seen so many buyers make mistakes on properties that they've purchased, especially like leaky homes or properties that might have a tendency to be leaky, and they don't even think twice, and they go, oh, this looks like a nice house, and off they go and buy it, and then you're going, hang on a second, why did you buy that house? It's probably like, as an agent you can see it immediately sometimes, and you go, yep, this is a potentially problem house.
You get the plaster clad house that's $300,000 cheaper than every other house on the street, and someone goes, cheapers, I got a great deal here. And then they've bought it and go, oh, it's actually a leaker. I wondered why it was $300,000 cheaper than everything else, and I haven't got the money to fix it.
Yeah, and if it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Probably is, yeah. So it's and the old saying of good isn't always cheap, and cheap isn't always good.
Yeah, absolutely. And so yourself, you used to flip properties, right? You did.
So buy and hold was sort of our main strategy. Tried flipping once.
Yeah.
Got a bit burnt by it. Well, we got lucky because we also were in a situation where we could convert the house into a 5-bedroom rent by room in Palmerston North.
Right.
So we sort of overcapitalised on that. The project was a bit bigger than what we thought, but it just comes down to having those exit strategies and going, right, if we can't sell it, what else can we do to sort of break ourselves even until such a time as the market caught up. But yeah, mainly buy and hold is sort of key strategy for me. So the one I understand and the one we've had sort of the most success with.
Yeah, right. And so what kind of things would you look out for yourself if you were buying for yourself?
I'm probably a little bit different to what I tell my clients to buy.
Yeah.
Just in terms of sort of from an experience perspective, it's sort of the stuff like repiling, unless you can get the place dirt cheap. Repiling and re-roofing are sort of the two things that initially look like they're not going to cost you a lot, and then you pull the roof off and realise that you've got to, that some of the trusses aren't right, or you've got to re-purlin the whole roof, or with a repile that you've got the old totra piles or something like that, and you go and jack the house up, and then all the door frames crack, all the jibbing cracks, and all the door frames go, and you're there trying to get everything back into square, and it's not just a repile, it's an interior renovation as well, because things will squid themselves back out.
Yeah. So that's the type of property you buy?
I'd stay away from those ones.
But you personally do it sometimes?
I've done it previously.
Yeah.
But in terms of sort of personal things I look for, I tend to look for like something that'll break even, big chunk of land that we can later develop. Or I've done a couple of projects of like chopping bigger houses into two, whether that's upstairs, downstairs, or horizontally with putting firewalls in and turning one house into two tenancies.
Yeah, right. And then is the goal then to increase the yield by increasing the rent effectively by breaking it into two houses?
Yep.
And you're looking for properties where it's relatively cheap and easy to do that?
Yeah. So, I mean, it all comes down to what the numbers are. I mean, equity is probably the biggest player in it for us, where it's like, right, if we can break even on that from a cash flow perspective, but we can increase the property's equity by $200,000 or $300,000, then for me, that's the way to do things, because it's going to take you a long time to earn that cash flow and equity. But a lot of that depends on your own sort of financial position, what your risk appetite is. Yeah. Like I say, I don't recommend any of that to any of my clients, just because they're not there full time and they generally don't have the risk appetite if something goes sort of wrong to go and fix it. And try and keep them as safe and boring as possible to get them the best results. And then once they've got a number of properties and can have got some sort of bandwidth to do some bigger stuff, then we'll look to do it. But it's definitely not something that you'd want to be doing before you sort of had 4 or 5 under your belt.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that makes sense. And so do you then help people say, you might have people who come to you and say, by the time I want to retire, I want to have 4 or 5 properties, so I'm getting rental income for my retirement or something like that. Do you work long term with people around building those strategies? Yeah.
So most of our clients buy sort of a couple of properties a year through us. We have some that buy more, but the general rule of thumb is like, right, they've got most of them have got a retirement goal that they want to hit, and then so it's like, right, let's get sort of 3 or 4 under your belt, and then from there we can start looking at what we're going to do with the portfolio to then allow us to increase. I think probably one of the things that where people get tied up on is that they go to build themselves a portfolio and they think, I just need to keep all of these forever, but they never sell the ugly duckling or the one that hasn't performed. And the one that hasn't performed but it's run its race, to get that out of the portfolio so they can go and increase their borrowing capacity, put some more cash into another property, rather than I need to hold this forever because I'm never going to find anything as good as property X. Right,
so don't be afraid to let go of one property in exchange for another property.
Yeah,
if there's the possibility.
100%. Or sometimes it's like a case of sell one to buy 2.
Yeah.
If you're going to increase your equity, increase your cash flow, why wouldn't you sell one to get another couple under your belt? Yeah. And I don't think it's so much about numbers in terms of like owning 20. It's more so about like where's your figure that you need to hit, and what does your portfolio need to look like to get you there? And like I say, from day one, it might mean buying just like four single houses that aren't that pretty, that you can sell a couple of them at a later point to then go and buy some other properties that are going to yield you what you're looking for retirement. It's like most things in life, like business. It's not a linear line where you think, right, we'll just do this and and we're here and we're sorted, there's a few hoops to jump through and a bit of roundabout in circles.
Yeah, right. And so in terms of, let's say part of that journey with someone is property market goes up, property market goes down. Do you take a different approach in different markets?
Yeah. So like we've got clients that we're buying for at the moment that we bought for in 2021. And a message from one of my clients today was, hey, look, we bought one of our houses at the peak in 2021. The value of that's dropped. We're looking to buy this other one. And we can buy both of them. There's no issues with it. But it's a case of having a chat to them going, the thing is we don't need to sell the one we bought in 2021. There's only material loss there if we do have to sell it. The place is cash flow positive. It's in a reasonably good location. Yes, the values come down. We don't need it for our next lot of lending. Eventually the market will go back up. It always does. And then, if we need to realise those gains at that time, we will. It's only when you've got to sell something that you run into issues of, I've just had a $100,000 loss, or it's a little bit similar to the where we live in Mount Albert, or the place we've got there is, there's the townhouse that we live in, there's the one next door. The people there bought the townhouse for 1.2 million. They want to sell it, but they're only getting offers of 900,000. So, and if I don't know whether they have to sell it or they don't, but if they accept 900,000, there's a tangible loss over that period of time. If they can survive it and then get out the other side and then sell it at a later point, whatever that might look like for them, the loss then becomes intangible.
Yeah. It's an interesting dilemma for someone who has bought at the peak and then is thinking of selling now, because arguably if they buy and sell in the same market, if they sell well and buy well, they can still have a net gain from where they are right now. Yeah. So say that example you just gave, if they bought at 1.1 or whatever it was, and then they sell at 900, but if they're able to buy, let's say, an equally valuable property at 800, in that instance, from the 9 to the 8, they've actually made 100 potentially, right? Across the same market. And so if you're in a position where you need to sell, or there's an opportunity for a really good buy, there could still be stomaching that loss in order to fund what is actually a net gain.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The other thing to keep in mind with that too is like, and it's a discussion having with another client at the moment too, is like he bought a house a while back, and then he's like, do I sell it now or don't I? And then the question then becomes, well, you can sell it now and break even, and then we can go and put our money somewhere else. He's like, but then if I hold it, it's costing me, we'll call it 30 grand a year to hold it. And if it takes another 5 years to before the market comes back, then there's 150 grand in holding costs. And so, for example, if he had to sell it for 1.5 now, he's then going to sell it for sort of 1.65 plus agent fees, so we're up to close to 1.7. And then you look at that over the time and your return on investment and your opportunity lost, and you go, are you better to try and hold out and hope the market comes back to 1.7 in 5 years' time? Or do you just work with what you've got now and go, right, it's not great in terms of his perception of it, but I'm better to get rid of it, cut my losses, not deal with the what ifs, if only I had of, and then just draw a line in the sand and go, right, this is where we are. I haven't gone backwards. Let's just make some steps forward down this path, rather than sort of on the hope strategy that one day it'll come back. Yeah,
it's the cutting the losses, or breaking even is great, but let's say even cutting losses is a hugely difficult decision for people, and yet sometimes extremely critical to make the right decision.
No, 100%.
Yeah, no, totally. So where do you see the market going at the moment? Do you think it's going to go up, down, sideways?
At the moment, it's an interesting place. So for us, we predominantly do investment property. Standalone housing at the moment, there's not a whole lot of competition out there. Multi-unit property, I don't know what's happened in the last 2 months. It seems to have gone ridiculously hot again. Sort of December, January, February, we're putting in offers and there was no one else around. I think we put in a couple of tenders in the last 2 weeks, and there's been 10 and 11 other tenders in. I've got an offer that we're putting in this afternoon, but there's 5 other offers on the table for it. So it depends on the areas and the markets themselves. But when you look at sort of total stock, if you go back to November 21, when there was if you take realestate.co as a whole, there was 11,500 listings nationwide, including sections. And then yesterday there was 40,500. So stock's gone up nearly 4 times in 3 years. And, you know, there's not the mad rush like there was of... I remember...
I have to get into this property now.
Yeah, it was mad. Like 2021's like people, you know, property's never going to be this cheap again. We've just got to get in. You'd turn up to an open home and there'd be a line out the door, and, you know, the agents go, well, look, you've got to really pay $100,000 over asking price to get this. Whereas now it's like, well, that's the asking price, but we'll put in what we think, and if we get it, great. If we don't, that's cool. We'll just move on to the next. So yeah, but it varies from place to place.
Yeah, you can definitely be a lot more picky now.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see whether that changes over the next little while.
Yeah, it seems to be the case. Like when everything's on sale, everyone's petrified of buying, and then when the market's in mania, then everyone's piling in to try and get it because it's never going to be the same again.
The old supply and demand and economics.
Yeah, exactly that, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. All right, well, I think there's been some really great ideas here, and I'm sure some buyers have come away with some new thoughts on buyers agencies. I personally hope that it's going to grow across the country because I think there's a real opportunity for it, and it'll just be interesting to see whether people play ball.
Yeah, 100%. One way to find out.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Awesome, thanks, appreciate it.
Cheers.